So following on from a video I did a while back about choosing colours for, I think it was an orange roan Cocker Spaniel. Today I'm looking at choosing colours for this lovely little black working Cocker Spaniel. Looking at your photograph in a whole, looking at the hues of the photograph, deciding whether it's warm, whether it's cold, which I know that some people find it a little bit difficult to distinguish whether something's warm or cold, and I'm sure there's there's a load of theory behind it, but basically how I decide whether something's warm and cold is I look at it. If it looks blue, it's cold. If it looks red, it's warm. This is actually a mixture of them. So if we look on a Merlin's head up here, it's quite cool, so there's lots of blue going on. Actually, in his little eyebrow area here, that's quite a warm area where the light's just catching the top, so that's sort of like got reddy bits in it. Looking at the ear, it's a mixture of cool tones and warm tones, and looking in his ruff down here, this is quite a warm area here, lots of warm greys in here, but then when you go onto his back, it's quite cold. So when I look at a piece like this, before I put pencil to paper, the first thing I work out is what do I want this piece to look like? How do I want it to end up? I want it to be obviously as close to the photograph as possible, but not an exact copy of the photograph. So I may well change up some things, I may well sharpen areas, I may well fade out different areas, leave bits and pieces out, and I might change some of the colours if I feel that they would work better as a portrait. I think one of the things that I discussed on the last when I was talking on my last video about colours was just being careful about what's reflected in the fur, because once you take the background away, the reflections in the fur can look a little bit strange, you know. So I think we had some green tinges in the dog's chin area, and it would have looked a little bit odd having that isolated from the photograph where it was standing in a field. So this one, as well as looking at the colours, so what I'm seeing is I'm seeing some bluish turquoise up here. If I'm looking at Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils, I'm seeing bluish turquoise up in this area around the dog, and actually in a lot of places around here I'm seeing that bluish turquoise, which is a really fabulous colour. I'm seeing a lot of light cold grey, so cold grey 1, 2, 3 in areas like this, and I'm also seeing a lot of pinks, which I would probably use as my first few layers. I would create this dog on a toned paper, so I use the Clairefontaine pastel mat. So I would probably use the dark grey for this particular piece, and I would do an initial whole layer of probably cold grey 1 all over highlight areas, but also starting to depict the fur direction and the texture of the fur, and that will give me a great starting point. And then I'd start to add in layers of sort of like a cold grey 2 or 3 in these sort of areas around here, and also the like a light flesh or cinnamon in these sort of pinky areas, and then start to build up, not just using blues, because you know, the dog isn't blue, the dog is black, so you need to be able to combine colours so that you're going to get these gorgeous dark areas, and then you're also going to get these light areas that show reflection but that don't just look bright blue. So using your black is absolutely use your black. You know, we're not sort of looking at things and going, you know, don't ever use black on a black dog, because you know it's important, but use the black over the top of other colours to get this lovely rich denseness of the fur. So in this sort of area here above his, you know, this lovely eyebrow, if you're, and this is quite warm as well, you can see the warm tinges above it. So I would look at creating this lovely rich black with probably an initial layer of like a light pink, like a light flesh, or the cinnamon. Cinnamon probably be quite nice. So I'd create a layer in here, a very soft layer of the cinnamon, Then I would probably add a dark indigo over the top of that. Again, a very light layer, so you're not pressing onto the paper. You know, you're just starting to add that pigment. I'd probably then go over again with the cinnamon, because that will help to smooth it out and to blend it. I'd probably see how that works, and maybe another layer of the dark indigo, and then probably final layer of black. It might take a few more layers as well, and it may well be that I put a layer of cold grey over the top of that as well, just to help smooth out and to blend out into these areas here. But I would end up with a layer of black over the top, just to give it that richness. And the same in all of these other places, these other dark places. Sometimes in the nose area here, I would probably miss out the dark indigo in places and replace it with like a Caput Mortuum violet, something like that. So that shows the warmth underneath the final layer of black that you'll add. And that's what's going to give your portrait the form and the lovely richness of colours shining through. If you're using pink underneath, sort of like a dark blue, yes, you're going to cover it, but you're also going to see a hint of that coming through. And what I've found that you can do on the final layers is a really, really, really light wash of something really quite unexpected. You know, like some form of bright pink. You know, you could use sort of like a light purple pink, or you could use let's have a think. You could use the pink Madder Lake. Actually, that over the top of just in places sort of like around here, you know, and around here, just to get a semblance of. So you don't look at it and go, oh, it's pink. But you look at it and you think, oh, and it just adds to the final portrait. It's just adds a little something that it's not specifically a colour, but it's something that's there that just helps. And that's what I've started to use quite a lot in my portraits. Just tiny bits of colours shining through. Bright colours are fantastic for realism. And then we look further down into the dog's coat. We've got a lot of warmth down here on this side of the dog, on this left-hand side of the dog. So there is a lot of warm grey in here. Obviously there's some black, but I'd use some reds in here as well to keep that lovely warmth, and then start to bring in sort of blend the warm greys into the cool, so that, because this is quite cool down here in this area where the white fur is coming through. And sort of layering the warm greys with a bit of that sort of darker red into the black, and then adding sort of like some of the cool greys into there as well. You're going to get this lovely transition from the warmth to the coolness of this patch of white fur down here. And then of course you've got the cold area of the black fur here. You know, yes, it's black, but it's obviously very cool. It's got this lovely, again, bluish turquoise would be great here with some of the cold greys, and probably a very light wash of black over the top, just to knock the strength of the blue back, so you haven't got something really staring you in the face, but you've kept those lovely sort of different tonal values of the fur. And that's kind of how I would look at creating this piece. If I go on to the second image that I've got here, which is a black and white horse. This is a portion of the portrait that I created. When you look at this, actually the whole piece is very, very warm. You know, the white is really not white at all. It's quite, actually there's quite a lot of orange in here. There's orange glaze I think I've used in this top bit here, and in the you know, the bit of the hogged mane up at the top, and light yellow ochre you know, around here. So there is really no white in the white areas at all of this horse, and you can build some lovely fur texture using warm greys, yellow ochres, even some of the burnt ochre, the orangey colour in a very light wash. You know, you can create the semblance of white fur, but obviously there's so much colour in there. And you know, as well in this blaze, there's some pinky colours here, and then it's very warm down the front of her face, and going into the warm greys. My favourite warm grey is warm grey 2, and it's a really fabulous colour for blending. It's a light grey, but it just works beautifully. You know, so the white on this horse really isn't white at all. The black is very warm. You know, it's very pink based. So when I look at this, I see reds glowing through, I see pinks glowing through. I don't really see much blue at all in the fur. So if I recall correctly, when I created this piece, I actually used a base of cinnamon to begin with. So covering the whole of the black area, following the direction of the fur, putting that gorgeous fur texture in, because she's a black and white cob, so her fur is quite textured. You know, it's not soft, it's quite a coarse fur. So actually putting some of that fur direction in and the texture in is going to really help. So putting a base layer of the cinnamon on there, and then using caput mortem in areas like that, adding quite a bit of, you know, adding the caput mortem violet, and also, you know, a strong layer of black in these really dark areas, just to really pronounce and create contrast in the piece. And then for the highlights, using pinks and whites, and actually some warm grey in this sort of area here and up here. Even a little bit of maybe sort of like the burnt ochre, or a very light wash of orange glaze on here would just pick up some of these sort of almost browny tinges. I don't really like using brown on my on the fur, but sometimes a wash of like the walnut brown over the top of something else will just knock it back and give you a hint of something. But for my brown animals, I don't use brown pencils at all. I use reds and blues and oranges. But you can see running through her cheek down here, there are pinks. And you could really go to town with this. You could really go to town and add some fabulous colours in here, because you know. But again, people see colours in a very different way. You know, everybody's unique, so it's kind of up to you what colours you want to use and what colours you're seeing, and it will also depend on the where you're looking at your reference photo. So these days screens are very good, they're calibrated well. But you know, if you've got a reference photo that's printed out, that you know, it might be a little bit more saturated, then potentially you might be looking at it on a screen. So that's something to kind of have a look at. But just by studying your reference photo before you start putting pencil to paper, and just trying to train your eye to pick out these different areas of colour, you know, even if you sort of blow it right up, sort of like to almost pixel view, so you can, you know, you can start to pick out. So there's like browny areas here, there's proper pink here. There are apps I know that you can use to select a colour, but what they'll do is it will just go in and it will say, oh right, that's warm grey 5, for instance, this bit here, which is great. But if you follow that, you're almost going to have quite a static piece, because you're just going to go, I'll put warm grey there in, I'll put a bit of dark indigo there, I'll put a bit of dark red there. What I think for developing your sense of colour, it's working out what colours can I use underneath and on top of to create the colours that I'm seeing in the animal, and to create the dips, the form of the animal, the highlights, the shadows. How do my pencils work? And you can go into the theory of it, you can get all technical and everything, or you can just experiment. You can just go, okay, well, what will happen if I put orange over pink? You know, what will happen if I put, you know, obviously if you're going to put blue over the top of yellow, you're going to get a greeny tinge, and that's something to be aware of. But just experimenting and thinking, okay, so with coloured pencil, I'm layering. What do I need to layer to get the colour that I'm after? And that's where you're going to start getting some real enjoyment out of your drawing, because you're going to see some amazing results once you start layering those colours together, and not just trying to find a specific pencil for a specific colour. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, the whole joy is about the layering process, about finding different colours, you know, that are going to complement each other and that create the stunning look and feel of different kinds of fur. So thank you for listening to my garbled video. I am really passionate about my drawing and about drawing animals and developing myself. So I'd love to know what you think, and be honest. You know, if there's too much garbling and rubbish going on, please do tell me. And if there's anything else that you'd like to see on a video. I'm doing a beautiful chestnut horse at the moment, so I'd like to do a video on choosing the colours for that, because for chestnut fur I use lots of, like I was talking before, you know, pink underneath orange, which sounds like a very strange combination, but it works so well. So thank you very much.